Hello, thank you for joining us today. This is going to be the first of hopefully many TDOT office hours, specifically aeronautics office hours. We'll be able to go ahead and converse many different potential topics throughout the entire year as we work through to announce, as well as to announce opportunities to get feedback or announce opportunities of the new initiatives, as well as give further guidance on different things that are coming out within TDOT Aeronautics. So you don't have to wait till the General Aviation Regional Meeting itself, so that essentially we can sprinkle this through the entire year itself. So I just wanted to first and foremost go over some general information about office hours. Today specifically would be on hangar rates and charges. That will be specifically given by our director, JP Salvactor. The next one that we're going to be doing will actually be on Title VI in terms of some of the updates that have been coming down from the U.S. government, as well as specifically things that we're looking to work with in terms of the airports, as well as things that have to be implemented by the airports and their consultants, essentially. So with that, just for general information, I'm going to have everybody muted in the meeting. But if you have questions throughout the presentation today, please utilize the chat function. It should be essentially a little bubble like this at the very top of my screen. It shows it in a box. If you click it, you could type in a question. Either the staff will just go ahead and respond, or if it's specific to maybe that they don't understand the question, or maybe they need clarification, and or maybe the speaker needs to be able to be able to respond because it's really speaker oriented, then basically Miss Jennifer Johns will just put a thumbs up just to say, hey, I got your question. Essentially, if it is answered, basically we'll go ahead and put it as a heart in terms of the actual question itself. If you need further essentially guidance on essentially maybe your question wasn't fully answered, please continue to ask in the chat or wait to the end of the presentation. You can raise your hand and we can unmute you at that point to where you can verbally voice your question that we can go ahead and get answered. Today it will be about 40 minutes to 45 minutes of an actual presentation. The last little bit will be open for questions and or anything else that wants to be talked about if there is any time left. So with that, I want to go ahead and pass it off to JP Salvactor, and he'll be able to go through the presentation today on hangar rates and charges.
Excellent. Thank you, Christopher, and good morning, everyone. I will start sharing the presentation here. Let's give that 1 minute to show up. Hopefully now you're all seeing the presentation. If not, just put something in the chat there. So awesome. Okay. All right. So as Christopher mentioned, I'm JP Salvactor, the Director of Aeronautics Division under the Tennessee Department of Transportation. First, thank you to Christopher for starting this new webinar series and allowing me to kick off our first office hours session. Thank you to all of our attendees for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join and be engaged in this topic. And last but not least, thank you to Evan Lester, other staff involved in the development of these resources, and especially our consulting partners, Kimberly Horn and the subs that they had involved. They're actually joining us on the webinar today to correct anything that I say wrong or help maybe provide a little bit deeper information kind of behind the work that went into all of this and the assumptions that go behind this interactive equation module. So, and I guess I should cover that. So today's presentation is about our hangar rates and charges interactive equation module. Along with that is a guidebook, and there's some other resources that we're going to touch on as we go through the presentation. This is an extremely important topic. I know that we're all interested in. There was a lot of time and effort that went into research and pulling data, brainstorming on solutions, and ultimately the final products that we are rolling out today to our airport industry in the state. So the contents today, we're going to do kind of a brief introduction. We're going to take a minute to define what fair market value is, and then really get into the hangar rates and charges module and kind of walk you through step by step how to go through that. We're going to also talk about stakeholder engagement, because anytime you implement changes at the airport, especially in rates and charges, that engagement is critical. and then also some best practices that we recommend just kind of around the topic or around the implementation of these changes. So to start, we'll get into our introduction into the hangar rates and charges interactive equation module in the companion guidebook. So we recognize the importance of hangars to our aviation system and the ability to keep based aircraft on those facilities. They're also vitally important for generating the revenue that enables airports to stay in operation. For most airports in the state, the majority of their revenue comes from hangar leases and land leases. To ensure that airports are financially self-sustaining, FAA has a grant assurance, number 24, that requires hangars to be leased at fair market value or fair market rent. To help our general aviation airports determine if they are achieving fair market value for hangars, we developed a hangar rates and charges interactive equation module and the companion guidebook. So that's a kind of a quick introduction, but we do want to get into really the meat and potatoes here. So let's take a moment to define what fair market value is. On this slide, you'll see the FAA's definition included in a 2018 compliance guidance letter. To paraphrase, fair market value is the value determined in an arm's length transaction. So that's one that where you have a willing seller and a willing buyer who are free from any type of abnormal pressure or duress. Fair market value allows enough time for the transaction to occur in an open market, and it considers the intended use and circumstances of the property. Fair market value will fluctuate based on economic conditions in the area. Unfortunately, we found that many hangar rates have not been properly adjusted over time to accurately reflect economic conditions in that area and do not appropriately reflect the current market. So we, TDOT Aeronautics Division, decided to develop tools and resources to assist airports in more accurately determining what rates they should be charging. We're continually seeing data and hearing about the high demand and desirability for hangar space compared to the existing supply. Yet we also continue to see relatively low rents and very few hangars being constructed to address the growing needs. These low rents, which are below fair market value, have various detrimental effects on the airports and the system, making it vital that we work collectively to correct this issue. So we recognize that a lot of airports aren't charging fair market value. That has an impact on not only at the airport, but just on our system as a whole. So we want to work to correct that. So that led us to the creation of the module and the guidebook and the other resources. And so now that we've detailed what we're trying to solve and why it's so important, let's dive into using the hangar rates and charges module. There we go. Okay, sorry, slides were lagging there. So, so basically a 7-step process. It's fairly simple. And part of the vision for this module, I compare it to trying to assess the value of your used car. You've got various online tools that you can go to. You can enter some characteristics about the vehicle, the number of miles, what kind of additional features it has. And then it will give you a range based on the marketplace of what they recommend you could get for that car or what you could sell it for. So we took a similar approach. Let's enter information about the hangar, and then it will generate a range of recommended monthly rents that would be considered fair market value. So step 1 is that users will begin by selecting their airport from the drop-down list under the label airport name. Airports are alphabetical by the name of the airport. The module incorporates data on each airport's classification and socioeconomic metrics, such as county-specific per capita personal income, or PCPI. We'll get into more detail later on that, but this information is already recorded and will automatically be associated with the airport when selected. The classification will automatically factor into the pricing calculation. The data behind behind the scenes will be updated over time when classifications or that socioeconomic data changes. Step 2, users will select the type of hangar, the size of the hangar, and the year of the hangar construction. So a few notes here. So there's kind of 3 options that you've got here in selecting the type of hangar. The user should select or should input the year the hangar was built. If the module is being used for a newly constructed or yet to be constructed hangar, the current year should be selected. As you can see on the screen, kind of part B there, if a T hangar or shade hangar is selected, users must input the number of units in their respective input box. The type of hangar for which rent is being determined must be selected by the user. The tool can only be run for one hangar at a time. If there are multiple hangars for which a user wishes to determine the rent, the tool must be run for each hangar. So you can go through it as many times as you like. And then if you select box hangar, then users must input the length and width of the selected hangar. The calculation is going to assume or factor in the area for one aircraft. So there is a default value of 1,200 square feet that's input if no length and width are entered. All right, step 3 are the associated costs. So users will input monthly maintenance and operation cost. And there's 2 options here. You can either enter it as a total M&O cost for the facility as a whole, or users can input monthly facility insurance, monthly utility usage and maintenance. That could be electricity, gas, water, sewer, monthly facility maintenance and enforcement, paintings, inspections, those things, and any other monthly cost that are associated with that facility. So there's 2 different options there. If users are unable to or do not provide inputs, the module will default to a standard value for M&O cost by airport classification. The minimum costs are detailed further in the guidebook. If user inputs are less than the standard associated M&O cost, this section will default to the standard value. Step 4, this section is where ancillary hangar information is input and includes 3 parts to it. The user will select the hangar location on the airfield, the current hangar condition, and the existing hangar lease rate in the form of a flat fee if the module is being completed for an existing hangar. For airfield location, we really wanted to keep this simple, so the options for hangar location are either desirable or not desirable. Hangars in a desirable location are often those with easy access to taxiways, fueling, or any other close facilities that are considered desirable. However, all airports do differ, and hangar location desirability may vary depending on the desires of the tenants. The price recommendation is scaled relative to the desirability of the location of the hangar on the airfield. If it's selected as not desirable, then there's no scaling factor, and scaling goes up for desirable locations. So there should be a premium for desirable versus not desirable locations. Airport users should use their best judgment in determining this input. And so if you have questions, you can even run the module under both scenarios to see what those differences may be. Part 2 of step 4 is the hangar condition. So please note the selection is subject to each airport's representative and their assessment of the hangar's condition. The options available to select are poor, fair, and good. Scaling begins with the smallest scaling factor for poor condition facilities and scales up to good condition facilities. If the year of hangar construction is listed as the current year, Airport users will not be able to input the facility condition because it's going to assume that it is already in good condition. Airport users should use their best judgment in determining this input. Example circumstances where airport users should consider how old the hangar is, whether there are any structural issues with the hangar, and the physical appearance of the hangar. Is it new? Is it old and needs repainted? Is it weathered? Those type of conditions to assess the condition of it. And the third part to step 4 is the existing hangar lease rate as a flat fee. So the module will not recommend a lease rate that is lower than an existing rate because fair market value will have been achieved at that point. An assumption built into the module is that it will only recommend lease rates above what the airport is currently charging, never under that. This input is not available for new hangars or hangars where the year of hangar construction is listed as the current year. Step 5 is to select the amenities available at that hangar or at that specific unit. So the user will select whether utilities, electric, gas, water, sewer, any utilities other than electric, or if there's an automatic door that's available for the hangar that's being priced. So these inputs do not apply to shade hangars when that option is selected, but must be included to properly calculate the pricing module for T hangars and for box hangars. The input options allow the user to select either yes or no for these 3 amenities. Step 6 introduces the supply and demand portion of the calculation. So the user will input the percentage of all hangar occupancy at the airport and the number of wait-listed aircraft. For existing hangar capacity, the module is designed to adjust the price of the hangar rental rate based on the waitlist demand input by the airport, capping out at a 25% scaling or increase in the price. If there's no waitlist at the airport, or if existing capacity is sufficient to meet demand, the scaling factor is going to be 0. For hangar waitlist, airport users are asked to provide the number of aircraft on their hangar waitlist. This number is compared to the total number of base aircraft at the airport and the hangar occupancy rate to determine the supply or demand adjustment for the airport. We'll talk about some related background information in the next few slides that the module is dependent on. So one is the state airport classification. So you're probably all familiar with this. It was developed in our Tennessee Aviation System Plan update. These classifications are an indicator of both the size and prominence of the airport. So your larger, busier airports that are going to have more facilities, more services, and a higher demand, and therefore have a higher rent compared to some of the smaller airports with less activity. Airports in the module are assigned a scaling factor that is determined by their state classification. So it's starting at no scaling factor for our turf airport classifications, and then going up to no scaling factor for turf or community service airports, and then scaling up from there. So that factor is a large consideration in calculating the pricing module, especially as you have higher classifications. Earlier, I also mentioned that we utilize the county-specific per capita personal income. So this is a socioeconomic metric that represents the relative affluence of the community where an airport is located. The value of real estate is higher in high-income communities due to the desirability of those communities, and hangars are no exception to that rule. Airports are considered by the county they are in, and a small scaling factor, starting at no scaling for lower income communities, is applied to the module. The final piece of background data is the base aircraft information. The module includes airports verified based aircraft as determined by basedaircraft.com and accessed in December 2023. For commercial service and non-NIPIAS airports, their most recent 5010 form as of January 2024 was used. If you're not familiar, Based Aircraft is the National Based Aircraft Inventory Program, access through basedaircraft.com. It's maintained by the FAA, and it's an industry-trusted source for accurate based aircraft counts for all non-primary NIPIAS airports in the country. Step 7 is to calculate the recommended rates and export the results. So once all the required information has been input, the user will click on the Calculate button at the bottom of the page. The module will calculate a range of fair market values appropriate for the hangar rent. Users should hit the Reset button at the bottom of the tool if they make any input errors or want to run through the tool again. The module will be complete once the user clicks Calculate. The results of the module are presented as both standard and suggested monthly rates. For more information, the user can select Export to PDF to receive the information shown in the image on the right. Additional information on both the standard and suggested monthly rates are provided in the guidebook. So now that we've calculated a fair market rate for the hangars, how do we proceed? Well, the onus at this point is on the airport sponsors and the airport managers, who are responsible for implementing any changes to rates or leases. But we want to be clear that implementation will take time and is likely to be a sensitive topic. This critical step should be done thoughtfully to address potential resistance from tenants who might be facing the prospect of higher hangar lease rates. Airport sponsors should develop a hangar rate change action plan to ensure the implementation of the module findings goes as smoothly as possible. Part of that plan will involve determining whether an immediate or gradual rollout of the new hangar lease rates is needed. Rates can be slowly raised on a monthly, quarterly, or annual basis. Immediately raising rates can create tremendous public relations problems and can have a negative impact on future development and investment at the airport. So we want to make sure that's done appropriately. There are additional recommendations on implementation included in the guidebook, so I encourage everyone to spend time reading through it. One component of implementation of any change that cannot be overstated is stakeholder engagement. Many airport sponsors and airport managers that we surveyed reported that they had never or rarely increased their hangar rents. They have concern of upsetting tenants and customers, or they fear that increases would have negative side effects, like creating high turnover of long-standing tenants at the airport. That's understandable. We get it. However, it should not be a deterrent to increasing hangar rents to be consistent with fair market value. Given the existing condition of hangar rents in Tennessee, it is assumed that increasing rents will be the result for the majority of airports using the module. So we're going to discuss several key stakeholders that must be engaged in order to make the process of increasing hangar rents go as smoothly as possible and to minimize tenant turnover and disruption. These include existing hangar tenants, future hangar tenants, airport authorities or airport advisory boards as applicable, and the local municipalities. Existing hangar tenants are arguably the stakeholder that will be most impacted by an increase to hangar rents. The decision to increase hangar rents and the time frame for increasing those rents and the benefits and rationale behind increasing those rents should be carefully discussed with existing hangar tenants. Airport sponsors should have time between the decision to increase hangar rents and the actual implementation to allow existing hangar tenants the opportunity to provide feedback, express concerns, and have their questions answered. However, please note that the decision to increase hangar rents is solely that of the airport sponsor. The decision to increase hangar rents should not be swayed by dissenting opinions from existing hangar tenants. Future hangar tenants are an important stakeholder too, and communicating with them serves a dual purpose: to communicate the new hangar rent to ensure that there are no surprises if and when an owner is able to come off the wait list, and two, to remove any owners unwilling to pay the new hangar rent or otherwise ready to leave the wait list for another reason. So it's a good opportunity as you're adjusting rates just to also update that wait list. Shortly, John Briggs will discuss a recommended strategy and timeline that you can also find in the guidebook. Other stakeholders include airport authorities, local municipalities, and airport advisory boards. For many airports, the airport manager is not the ultimate decision maker at the airport. For changes like an increase to hangar rents, the airport manager must get approval from the airport authority, who is ultimately responsible for setting fair market value rates. Airport sponsors should also inform other local municipal offices that are in any way related to the airport or perceived to be related to the airport. So that could include parks and recreation, planning and zoning, city comptroller, any other local stakeholders like that. You want to make sure you're informing them about the increase in hangar rates as well. While they may not have the same rights and powers as an authority, airport advisory boards are equally important during stakeholder engagement. Airport advisory boards vary from airport to airport. Not every airport has one, but they typically provide input and guidance on issues related to the community's interaction with the airport. They often can also serve as a liaison between the airport and other local government functions, such as the mayor. This guidebook includes direction on presenting the module and the guidebook to the advisory board, including as both an informational item and as an action item for the board. So now I'm going to turn it over to my Assistant Director, John Briggs, who leads our Office of Grants, Compliance, and Inspections, to cover some best practices related to implementation, lease agreements, and more. So John, I will hand it over to you.
All right. Thank you, JP. Again, I'm John Briggs. I'm the Assistant Director of Aeronautics and over the Grants and Compliance section. And I just want to touch on a few quick slides about best practices for this module and managing your hangars in general. So if you go to the next slide, JP. So first would be to use the module and use it on a recurring basis. So you can see on the screen there's a timeline of events that you might follow in using it. Of course, you have the initial time you use it where you put all your hangars in there and see what rate you get there and determine if you need to increase your rates or not. And then, as was mentioned before, allowing for that stakeholder engagement to kind of telegraph that to the tenants on the airport, getting their feedback and letting them have a say. But ultimately, if you decide to increase your rates of, having that official decision made and implementing that, and notifying the tenants, and you want to give a lead time for that and not change rates the next month, but give them a few months to prepare for that coming rate increase and when the effective date of that will be. And of course, if you do end up increasing your rates, there are likely some tenants that may not want to pay it and decide to go elsewhere. So if you go to the next slide, JP. In that event, you're going to have a good hangar wait list that's who other potential tenants are that you can contact when you have a vacancy. And you want to make sure that's a professional, well-maintained list that you're keeping track of and that you scrub occasionally. Periodically you want to call the people on your list to make sure they're still interested and want to lease a hangar if a spot's available at your airport. And at that time, you could also use it to inform them that, hey, this is what our current rates are for hangars at the airport. And an important thing we would recommend is requiring a deposit to be put on the hangar wait list. This helps ensure that the people that you have truly are interested in leasing a hangar on your airport. Next slide, JB. So this list, items on this slide are a list of things you should probably include, information you should include on your hangar wait list. So the date of inquiry, that could be important for knowing when did they initially get put on the list. And that could help you for, establishing a pecking order of who's been on it the longest. They would get the first dibs on a hangar that became available. Making sure you have their correct contact information, knowing the type of hangar they're requesting. And so if it's the one available, will that fit their need? Any amenities they're wanting? What aircraft do they have? And knowing the specifics of it to know if the vacancy you have can fill their need. And any fees to be on the wait list, and a letter of intent from them of how serious they are and what they need for a hangar as well. So having a well-organized and well-maintained, transparent hangar wait list can be very helpful, especially if you're at a time where you're increasing rents and maybe you haven't for a while, and there could be some turnover. Having that good list to help reach out to people to fill your vacancies would be very helpful. And so if you're gonna, next slide, JP, if you're gonna get new tenants, it's very important to have good lease agreements with them for leasing a hangar at your airport. So things you might want to consider is making sure you have provisions in there to make sure they abide by your airport's minimum standards, which implies that your airport has minimum standards. So something that we would encourage is develop minimum standards for your airport. Make sure they're incorporated into your lease agreements so that people know what's expected of them on the airport. Addressing the utilities, who's paying for those. Discuss, the surrender of the hangar if they decide to move out, what that process is and what they're responsible for. And making sure they have an airworthy aircraft in the hangar and requiring that. So you may require an airworthiness certificate or an proof of an annual inspection each year to make sure that the aircraft they're storing in the hangar is airworthy and is actually being used for an aeronautical purpose. Next slide, JP. You want to establish some hangar minimum standards, and that's just to make sure for the safe operation of the airport and to make sure that they're being maintained properly. So there's, things you don't want people doing in the hangar because they're dangerous or they could damage the hangar. And again, you want to make sure they're using it for an aeronautical purpose. Next slide. And this is just some example language on the slide of what you might have in your hangar minimum standards. Things you can't do, things you can't store there. And being basically a good tenant that's maintaining the hangar, is using it for an aeronautical purpose, and is kind of being a good neighbor. So that's all I have, JP. I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, perfect. Thank you, John. Those are some really good best practices. So really, this effort resulted in several resources available to the public. You can find these by going to the Aeronautics Publication tab on our TDOT Aeronautics Division website. And the links on your screen should actually be live as well. So you can click on those. So the top link will take you to our website that has all of the different resources. And then that link under the first bullet is going to take you straight to the module or the tool. So those resources include the module or tool. They include that guidebook that we've mentioned. We also have a template lease agreement that is a fillable PDF, very simple to use. And then we also have hangar minimum standards as a template and related resources to that. So this is on our website. You've got access to that now. I will also be emailing a letter to all airports explaining the development of these tools and reiterating the importance of taking action. So please be on the lookout for that email soon. And to recap, low hangar rates contribute to a myriad of issues across the state. So first, charging under market value for hangars risk airports being non-compliant with FAA grant assurances. Second, low hangar rents make it difficult for airports to realize the profit needed to properly maintain the hangars throughout their useful life, as well as lead to unsubstantiated demand on hangar rates and the inability for the sponsor, the state, or even private development to be able to address the hangar shortage. So there's a lot of ripple effects there of not reaching fair market value. So given the complexity of this issue, TDOT Aeronautics Division developed the Hangar Rates and Charges Interactive Equation module and guidebook to easily determine a fair market hangar lease rate structure. The module is designed to be sensitive to local market demands, but to ensure airports are charging a fair market value for their hangars that will both maximize revenue and ensure the airport is compliant with FAA grant assurances. So moving forward, so first, we just encourage you to dive into this, read through the guidebook, test out the module, get very familiar with it. The benefits of raising rents and being compliant with the FAA grant assurances far outweigh the risk. Our expectations. So while we're mindful that these changes will take time to implement, you can't just do this overnight. We do expect that every airport to assess their rates and take actions to achieve fair market value over time if they are not currently. So as we go forward, we're going to evaluate. So we're going to continue to look at rates and charges across the state through an annual inventory or survey that will be part of the ACIP submittal process. Lastly, we encourage feedback on the functionality of the module and the guidebook. So there is an online feedback form linked on this website, and you can also find it on our Hangar Rates and Charges resources site. And there, if the tool is giving you any issues or anything like that, we definitely want to know. We want to get that corrected. So please let us know if you've got feedback there. So to finish out the presentation and start on questions, our objective is that this module and guidebook provides the appropriate tools for every airport in the state to ensure their hangar rents are in line with fair market values. This module is the official recommendation by TDOT Aeronautics Division with regards to hangar rents at the airport. John Briggs will be our primary point of contact for this initiative, so please note his contact information on this slide and reach out with any questions you may have after this webinar. And with that, we are glad to take any questions with our remaining time. I know we received several in the chat, so Christopher or Jennifer, if you can help with some of the questions that were received there.
Yes. So the first question we have is, what are the repercussions if an airport elects to not raise rents to the amounts of specified by the module?
Great question. Okay, so at this time, this is just guidance. These are our official recommendations of the Aeronautics Division. The biggest risk that you have is that if the FAA were to evaluate the airport, they may find the airport in potential non-compliance, and you might have a Part 13 process or investigation kind of play out from there. So I think the biggest risk or repercussion is that it could be a grant assurance finding, and that may have an impact on receiving future federal funding for the NIPIAS airports.
Okay. The next question is, what about land lease rates? We've had several people ask that.
Yeah. So that is that's on our radar as well, and we want to tackle that. In addition, that's probably going to be more of a phase 2 implementation related to rates and charges. We wanted to first focus on hangar rates, but hopefully we'll in the not too distant future we'll have some additional resources on those land leases, and that's going to vary. Just like this, it'll vary widely across the state depending on kind of all very similar information that we have here, but the classification of airport, the socioeconomic status, all of those things. So be on the lookout for those resources in the future.
Okay, so this one has 2 questions, so I'll just ask the first one and then pause. Has the module been tested using examples from a handful of airports across the state?
Yeah, we tested several airports. We did find a few that have achieved fair market value, and so that was reassuring. But unfortunately, the majority that we've seen through our system plan survey or even through the testing of the module are below. So we think achieving fair market value is very reasonable, and it may require an implementation plan. It may need to be done more gradually at some airports, so it's not overly disruptive or unfair to the existing tenants. And you've also got, we understand you've got existing lease agreements that you often have to you've got to let the term of those kind of play out, or let those agreements expire before you can really make significant changes. So
so
it'll take time.
The second part of that is, so have they been tested using airports that have raised rates on a regular basis and those that have not made any rental rate adjustments over the last few years? So like, has it been tested for airports that have already raised rates or have not made any rental rates adjustments? Is this new, I guess?
Yeah, so the whether or not an airport has adjusted over time, or how recently they've adjusted, really has no bearing on testing that. It's just our module is going to recommend a range, and if you're above that range, whenever you conduct that study, then it's going to you're going to be at fair market value. If you're below, it's going to recommend that you reach those ranges. So we have tested it at airports that kind of fall under all of the scenarios there, and we found results in both categories where they met and where they didn't meet.
Okay, the next question, will the module update every year to reflect CPI and change in local conditions?
Yeah, so we will do periodic adjustments to it based on, we've got the county per capita personal income. So anytime that's updated, we will update it. And then also for the state system plan classifications, if those are updated, we'll go back and make a change to the module. We may adjust other factors from time to time. Based aircraft is another one that is typically an annual update by the FAA. So that would be another one. So yeah, so we'll try to keep it as live as possible, but a lot of that will be dependent on how often the background data is updated.
Okay, the next one is data being input in the module being recorded?
I don't believe so. I may have to ask Kimberly Horn if we've got an additional database behind the scenes that is logging that. So I don't know if they're able to unmute.
I have to probably unmute them real fast. Give me a second. Zach, you should be allow Mike. Got you, Zach. If you want to unmute yourself.
All right. Hopefully y'all can hear me.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're currently getting the module set up so that TDOT staff will be notified and provided a kind of a download of the inputs that are put in. And then to the extent that it's kind of tracked and maintained over time is kind of up to TDOT's discretion. But that information is being provided up within the module. Yes.
Great. Thank you, Zach. And while we've got you unmuted, anything you need to correct to anything I said?
Not correct. I'll just maybe reiterate a few points. It is the intent of this module to keep it as up to date. So per the like inflationary factors going in year to year and things like that, it is the goal and the aim of this to be as helpful and current as possible. As the years goes on, we understand this isn't we roll this out today and everything is changed tomorrow. It will be a long-term rollout of this. So we'll be keeping it as up to date as possible. And then I also saw a question in there on application of these costs to community hangar spaces. And that's a good note that even if you put in and you utilize the module to do a cost estimate or to do a lease estimate for a box hangar, the values that you're seeing and the recommended rates that you're seeing are per aircraft. It's not the entire unit that you put in. So in that way, it can be applied to community hangar leases as well.
Yeah. Thank you for that clarification, because I know it's sometimes terminology, what we consider a box hangar versus a community hangar. But yeah, we've kind of grouped those together for the purposes of the module.
I think there's one last question. I don't know if this has been addressed or not. Is there a way to compare/contrast with other airports that are local to the user making the request? Would be interesting to see that type of data for making decisions about how and when rates are adjusted.
Yeah, so the modules, it's public and any user has access to any of the airports on the list. So I think that the best way to do that would be to run some scenarios for the other airports around yours, and you can see what the module's producing. But keep in mind that we have tailored this very specific to each county and each airport and their classification, and so there's likely going to be differences because there are differences in the facilities. Maybe the amenities, location on the airfield. There's all of those factors that we've tried to account for kind of, to scale the pricing or any premium that might be associated with basing your aircraft in different airports or different locations, even on the airfield.
Okay, and last question, unless anybody else has any, will compliance with these guidelines be added to the state priority ranking system for airport projects associated with approval of grants?
There's no plans currently to modify our state priority rating system, the SPR. That if that's done, that's a multi-year effort. We really have to be, we have to have time to gather data. We've got to modify the tool, and then where that can be applied is during programming. So, really in draft, kind of going through the programming process and finalizing the ACIP. So if that were to happen in the future, I would say that would be, a few years out. We would have to gather more information. And then, a lot of times it would depend on the project and would depend on the funding sources. I think if Aeronautics Division was able to have, bearing over making it a factor in funding projects. So I think there's a lot that we've got to dive into there, and we're going to have to, take time to see just kind of how this plays out. But I want to reemphasize, the very real and current risk would be that an airport is found in non-compliance of their grant assurance number 24, and so that's that on top of just wanting our system to be self-sustaining and making sure that we are that airports are receiving enough revenue to cover expenses and plan for the future and take care of their facility is very important. So I think there's enough factors without us having to say no to projects to drive the implementation of fair market value rates.
Okay, so we have, I think about 9 or 10 more minutes, but we have a couple more questions. When will the module go live? I've tried to access on multiple devices and it says it's disabled.
Okay, it should be. I'll test it here myself.
HAB, someone had already tested it during the actual presentation, said that it was working well.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm able to access it right now too. So I don't know if that could be a cybersecurity thing, maybe for your local agency. I don't know. I mean, it's all through tn.gov websites. So or our related system plan website. So it should be all very secure and not create any issue. But maybe if you can try a few more times from maybe different locations or
I think Christopher just added a link into the chat if she wants to try, if Erin wants to try that. So
yeah.
Another question, what is the difference in standard monthly rate and suggested monthly rate given in the results? What determines standard?
Okay, so standard is, in other words, would be the minimum to be considered fair market value. So that would be the minimum that's really fair to the airport, considering the cost, the operation, and operating and maintenance cost, those factors. As you start to see in the suggested scales the pricing up so that there's more return for the airport to be able to use for other projects or for maintenance. So it's increasing the revenue for the airport. Just like running a business, you don't want to just simply break even and just cover your expenses. You want to have some profit or some additional revenue that you can reinvest back into your airport. So the suggested is more, and the guidebook has a lot of detail. So I definitely encourage, as you've got some more detailed questions like that of what's going on kind of within the module and some of the basis for that, the guidebooks kind of spell everything out as far as our assumptions and variations like that. But that's a great question.
Okay, and then we have the tool does not seem to take into account hangar investment. Can you speak to this?
So it does, and that's kind of sort of more behind the scenes, and that's another area I would encourage you to look through the guidebook. The guidebook lays out. So there was a lot of literature review that was done. We looked at existing FAA guidance. We looked at ACRP studies on this, and so when we're talking about the pricing methodology that we use and other pricing strategies, you'll see the supporting information for that and the capital cost or that kind of initial investment is part of the initial data. So, but you'll find a much better description of that in the guidebook.
JP, we've got another question. If we find anomalies, is there a way to raise an argument with the module or specific formulas built in the model itself, or at least justify the rental rate? Is there a process in place for such a situation?
So I think we'd have to know more what the anomaly is. We want to make sure that's not an error in the module itself. So I would encourage you to use the feedback form that we have, and that way you can let us know. We can get back to you. We're going to be monitoring that. So let's use that process. It looks like, Christopher, you linked that Microsoft form for the feedback as well as the module. So thank you there. Yeah, just let us know if something doesn't look right. We'll be glad to look into it and get back to you.
I think that was the last question, unless somebody has something else or if I missed any questions.
Okay. Well, great. Well, I know we need to wrap up. We're running short on time, so I do appreciate, again, everybody's attendance today. This is a very important topic, and so we're looking to address it collectively, and want to be of assistance to the airports and to our system. So, Christopher, I think maybe you had did you have some announcements that you wanted to close with?
Yeah,
Okay.
just one announcement for us to close with. And as JP said, thank you for attending today. This has been phenomenal. There is a link in the chat for other office hour topics of interest that you may have that we can work to take in consideration to work out a annualized schedule. So again, for next month, we'll be talking about Title VI. For the month after that, we're looking at specifically talking about essentially scoping meetings. And then for the month of December, that may be situationally because of Christmas, and then of course restarting in January as well. So please submit other topic ideas that have been something that you've been wanting to know. I know probably Black Cat may be one of the topic areas, or fundings, or how to fund, or stuff like that too. So by all means, please utilize that link. Help us out. We want to create a good list of potential things for us to tackle to help the community out. So with that, we do appreciate it. We'll stop the recording, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.
All right. Thanks, everyone.